Um, Thanks, Elsa. So if you allow me, I will read both of their bios. So Lisa Tatu Hay, she, her pronouns, is a co-executive director at FairShare. She is responsible for the Women Leadership Lab, an innovative leadership program for women in the civil society sector based on feminist leadership approaches, as well as our work in feminist development policy. As a member of the Black Earth Climate Justice Collective, she advocates for and conducts workshops on decolonial approaches to the climate crisis and international development. So Lisa, thank you so much again for being here. And Helen Wolf, she, her pronouns, co-founded Fair Share of Women Leaders EV in 2019 and has been leading the setup of the initiative. Since 2023, she is sharing the executive director role with Tatu. Before starting FairShare, she served as the deputy executive director at the International Civil Society Center, where she led and managed the development from a startup phase to a mid-sized organization. In this capacity, she also worked closely with the top leadership of the largest internationally operating civil society organizations on issues such as governance, accountability, and cooperation. She lives in Berlin, Germany, with her parents and partner and two kids. Sorry. Helen and Lisa, thank you so much for being here. And I would love to give the word back to you so you can take us through the Fair Share journey. Thank you so much again, all, for joining.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Camilla and Elsa, and also for the invitation and for having us here today. Yeah, Camilla already introduced me. My name is Tatu. I use she, her pronouns, and together with Helena, I am the co-executive director at Fair Share of Women Leaders. Helena, would you like to say hi shortly before I say what we're going to be doing for the next hour?
Sure, and thanks for the introductions, Camilla and Elsa. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Helene, and yeah, this co-leadership model that Tatu and I are developing is obviously a big part of the journey that we're trying to share a little bit with you all about today. So we're looking forward to that.
Thanks, Helena. Yeah, so let me share my screen with everyone. All right, yeah, that. Oh, no, sorry, 1 second. That was, oh no, yes. So you can see the welcome sign, correct? Okay, great. Then, so yes, so we are here today to share with you a bit about, yeah, our journey. I guess what started out as Helena's journey, and now it has evolved into a lot of people's journey of Fair Share, which is, yeah, a feminist organization, or tries to be as feminist as possible. And yeah, we would share a bit about Fair Share ourselves, about what we do, and about our story so far. And after a brief presentation, we would open the space, and yeah, just love having a discussion with you, making space for questions. Yeah, so that's how we would structure the next 50 minutes. I would start. So who are we? Fair Share of Women Leaders was established in 2019 after a series of yeah, power abuses in the social sector, social impact sector, sorry. And our vision, basically, because of this power abuse, is to spark and sustain a feminist transformation of the social impact sector. And yeah, with that, we envision, our mission is to we want to make the social impact sector embody its values and its internal structure those internal structures in its culture. We want women in all their diversity to enter or to be able to access leadership positions. And by also being equitably represented and meaningfully included, so not just being used or displayed as tokens. And we would like the social or a social impact sector where feminist perspectives can challenge and can change the culture of organizations truthfully and meaningfully. Helena, would you like to add to this?
Thanks for the introduction, and I think it already shows kind of where we are today as an organization that is has moved to a very collective ownership model by now, because this is the outcome of a process we now did around our mission, our vision, and our values, and our strategy going forward, both with our stakeholders, but of course also with the team. And Tato, if you go to the next slide, just to give you an impression of who we are as a team as well. Now it's, yes, the other way. Because as Tato said, it's basically started in my living room. I had ended my my previous job, and there was this crazy idea to start an initiative for more women in leadership and a different type of leadership in the nonprofit or social impact sector. And I basically gave myself a year to see if that would fly. And now, as we enter our 5th year, there's this amazing team that you can see on the screen in front of you. And so it's been a pretty exciting journey, but also really challenging journey. And I think what has been also for me a completely new part of work, even though I had been part of building a mid-sized organization, was to be super intentional about feminist values being embodied from the very beginning, because we said we're asking the sector to live up to its promises and its values around equity and gender equality in particular, but that also means we need to hold ourselves accountable to those values. So how do we build an organization that doesn't reproduce structures of inequity and unequal power that we want to change? And so this was embodied from the very, very beginning, and meant a lot of processes around learning and unlearning, and especially in the last half a year, when we went from a team of 5 that had started to really build these core values together from the ground, to now the team that you can see on the screen here, where we're actually building kind of the 2nd phase of our organization. And of course, there's many more challenges to really uphold these values and keep that feminist perspective on everything we do. And we will share more about that from after talking a little bit more about our work. But this has been very special to me and to this very particular journey, to have that intention and that core value at the heart whenever we designed a project or a process. And yes, it's as intense as it sounds. But first, just a few words on what we're trying to do in our program and activities. As Tato said, we aim to inspire and spark this feminist revolution, basically, in the social impact sector. And we do this in 2 ways. First of all, we want to increase accountability and transparency around equity and representation in the sector as it is today. And that's why we developed the Fair Share Monitor, which is the first tool to measure women in leadership in the social impact sector. But at the same time, we said we need more women leaders, but we also need new ways to lead. And that's where we are developing resources and work with partners to really advance and inspire what a feminist leadership model would look like in the sector, and of course trying to do that ourselves in parallel. So it's all intertwined, our own journey as an organization and the work that we're trying to do. The monitor is a data tool, and we collect every year some key statistics from organizations, and obviously there's more information on our website. This is just to give you an idea of the kind of questions we're asking organizations to increase accountability and transparency, as this was just not available before we started this work. And then we just recently released the latest figures, where we, if you can go to the next slide, to give you an idea of what kind of results we're then releasing about women's representation, but we're also trying to dig deeper and deeper into more intersectional parts of gender representation. And for the third year now, we've been asking about data around Black, Indigenous, and women of color, so that women are not treated as a homogeneous group, but that we can get more and more data about which women are then coming into these positions. But we're at the very beginning of this journey and this process. It's very challenging to navigate that space, but we're committed to make also our data and the way we get the data more and more intersectional, so that we don't again reproduce structures of privileged women coming into these positions, and not other underrepresented groups are again being overlooked and underrepresented. Back to you, Tato. What's the other part of our work?
Thank you for that, Helene. Yeah, so as Helene just portrayed the first part of our work, the part that I would now share with you really encaptures the basically next step. So yes, we want more women leaders and more diverse women leaders, but we also want new ways of leading and new understandings of what leadership can and should be, because obviously also people who are oppressed, if they come, or marginalized, if they come into positions of power, can also reproduce oppression, and don't necessarily build the collective to take all other marginalized people with them. So what we want to do is advocate towards the social impact sector of embracing feminist leadership and feminist organizational cultures, or a feminist or a cultural organization that is based on feminist principles, like that. And we at Fair Share are obviously stand in very much debt to the people who came before us, who had developed this concept of feminist leadership, who had practiced it, and especially Srilata Batliwala, who was the first person to, really put this whole concept also onto paper. Srilata, who we also work very closely with, defines feminist leadership, or one definition that she says, that describes feminist leadership, is that it is a process of transforming ourselves, our communities, and the larger world to embrace a feminist version of social justice. It's the process of working to make the feminist vision of a non-violent, non-discriminatory world a reality. It's about mobilizing others around this vision of change. And so for us, what really, really stands out is this aspect of understanding that it's a process, and that it's a never-ending journey, basically. So it's not like a 10-step list and then you're basically a feminist leader, but it's much more complicated than that, and about embracing this complexity and also the discomfort, the joy that is part of a process of transformation. Something that is also, or that we find that is very important, is especially this emphasis on ourselves. So also looking within at oneself and asking oneself about the privileges, the biases, just the things we have been socialized with in our world, and seeing how that shapes us and our leadership skills, our ways of looking at the world, and that this is also something very important when it comes to people who would like to embrace feminist leadership and embark on this this journey of of a collective process. So getting other people to also join you in this journey, and not just saying, I'm just going to do it by myself, but really taking people with you on to make this world a world which is based on more principles of justice, rather than as currently very much short-term profit and greed and competition. Yes, so this is basically kind of in a nutshell what Srilata defines or describes as what feminist leadership can achieve. And for a lot of people, it's always, or also for us, obviously, it's also very abstract. Because I said, there is not this 10-point plan that we can follow and then know, okay, we've done this, we can basically log this and have achieved something. But what we at Fair Share have tried to always reflect upon and look back at are some of the points that I'm sharing with you right now on this slide. So really about redefining practice and purpose of leadership. And we believe that this can happen by acknowledging existing inequalities and injustices. So here as an example, we could take, if we look at poverty a lot of times and the way it's talked about in the mainstream, it's kind of like as if poverty is something natural, like it happens, but we don't really talk about the systems that lie behind this production of poverty. And so I really think that if we embrace feminist leadership, we also have to look at these inequalities and these injustices that, for example, bring out injustices such as poverty. Defining leadership as a means to achieve social justice. So if we look at a very mainstream understanding of what, or not understanding, but also picture of what a leader is, then we a lot of times mostly see this single person, mostly it's a man, mostly it's a white man from the global north, who through some sort of charisma or what has been basically elevated to this position of alone kind of deciding what is best for a wide array of people. And so moving away from this understanding or from this perspective, this very ego and personal gain driven perspective, towards understanding leadership as something that is in all people and which all people can carry and should be part of. So giving everybody the chance to be a leader and to take on leadership. The third point, which we are constantly doing, analyzing, question, and redefining power structures. So not basically not talking about power, because power is always there, and I think because we've just in society been prone to not talk about power, it's really been kind of taken in, and it's now in a very bad limelight because we always only see it when we're talking about something negative. And I don't think that power is necessarily negative. I think it can be something beautiful and wonderful, but it's about who holds the power and how long this person holds the power, whether they share the power. And so really looking at those structures and also organizations, where does the power lie, and how can we reshape that to just recreate an understanding of positive power. Feminist leadership, as I said, is also not based on always being in this super happy space, but also calls for a lot of discomfort. So not only as a collective, but also as an individual, we have to be accountable for our actions, embrace also mistakes, and see mistakes also not something negative, but as something that we can learn from and potentially do differently in the future. As I said, discomfort, big part of feminist leadership, especially when we want to change stuff on a systemic level. This will always come with unlearning the normal, or things we take for normal, or unlearning it's always been that way, because also from a systemic level, a lot of these things have been socially constructed, and it's about challenging those and changing also these systemic levels, as they have an influence on obviously every individual one of us. So maybe this just kind of as a short overview of some things that we at Fair Share look at when we're speaking about redefining practice and purpose of leadership. And in our last slide, Helena and I would just like to share some, also mistakes, some practices, some challenges that we have faced over the last years with you. Helena, if it's okay, I would start. Okay. So something that we've had so far, 3 recruitment practices. I can only speak for, I have so far had the privilege been on both sides of this recruitment practice. The first time as someone who applied to work at Fair Share, and the second time someone who was looking at the job applications for the amazing people who took the time to send us a CV and apply for the positions we had open. Maybe giving you a bit of my thoughts on the perspective as someone who was looking at the applications. Pretty much towards the end of the recruitment phase, we kind of looked at the applications we had and somehow thought, this doesn't feel right. Somehow we've got mostly people who are based in Europe, and we really wanted to not have that. We wanted to have people from all around the world. And so we kind of took the time within a team meeting, said, hey, maybe there was some kind of inner bias within us, and we kind of felt more comfortable with certain formats that we were looking at, and less comfortable with maybe formats that we were less familiar with. And so this really forced us to look at applications again, and to go back to applications that we had found really good, but maybe just from pure, visual way had somehow decided against it. And this was really, really great as we just took this time to be self-critical within the team, and I think made really great decisions based upon this, this moment together, reflecting on this recruitment practice. Helene, over to you.
Yeah, so this thanks for sharing some around our recruitment, because I think this was the first, for me, it's the first time where we super intentionally thought about power dynamics and power structures in recruitment practice, and how we could structure our practice in the way we look for team members, but also then when we interview them and then offer them the job, to not reproduce this. And so this has also been a really interesting experience for me to really think this through, what it means if there's like 3 people interviewing 1. Can you hear me again? Someone says they can't hear me. Can everybody else hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then hopefully you can rejoin. Thanks. The other kind of big learning experiment, so to say, was when we had the idea to develop a new project, which is the Women Leadership Lab, which stemmed from an idea that basically came out of a conversation like, okay, yes, the monitor, we know there's not enough women on top. How can we change that? And how can we design a program that supports and empowers women who are in those positions or who want to move into those positions, so that we support the next generation of women leaders for the sector. And what I had learned previously in my other jobs was, you develop a concept, then you send it around. Yes, maybe you will get some feedback, but then you just like go ahead and implement it. Here we created these collaborative spaces with different organizations, ranging from super progressive campaign organizations to faith-based, rather conservative, big federal organizations. And in 3 to 4 moderated discussion rounds, we basically designed a program from scratch. And it was one of the most interesting processes I've ever been a part of, because you could really see the value of the different perspectives, and that talking through them and not starting from something that has already been set out and that can then be criticized, but to really think this through together, exchange perspectives, sometimes not being of the same opinion, but in the end coming together towards a shared understanding of what we wanted to do and what we wanted to achieve, which of course required a lot of compromises, was such an interesting process, because it completely turned my understanding of efficiency around. Because I was told you need to have a concept and then you implement it. What I had then experienced is implementation becomes super difficult, because everybody understands something different about the concept, and then all the questions come up in the implementation phase, especially when it's with a lot of partners. Here we took the time to really figure out what we wanted to do together. And then implementation was basically just went off on its own, because there was so much trust. There was so much shared understanding of our goals and how we wanted to do this, that we even co-financed the program in the end. All of the organizations are now sending some of their staff members to now soon the 3rd round of this program, and it's really a co-owned and co-shared program that was developed and implemented so differently from everything I had learned how project management is being done. So that was also for me personally a big unlearning experience, and how you can, with the feminist lens and this feminist perspective that acknowledges and accepts the different perspectives, but for example, really equally shares power, whether it was a big organization or small organization. Everyone had the same voice in our process, and compromise could be found. And I think the highlight of this process was when one of the male white CEOs in this process said, now I understand we don't need to teach women anything. We just need to remove the barriers for them to get into these positions. I was like, okay, this conversation actually made a difference to the kind of work that we're doing. So that's an example I would like to share from my journey. Do you want to take over co-leadership, Tatu, and then maybe we open up for questions for first round, so it's not just us talking, but we actually enter into a conversation.
Yes, sounds good. Yeah, so Helena has already mentioned that she was the co-founder, but for about 3 years, the sole executive director. And I think there are always, obviously, in feminist organizations or organizations that would like to do things differently, there's always these kind of barriers that you face from outside, such as formal positions that you that need to be there in the framework that is currently given. But already in her position as the sole executive director, Helena tried to really distribute the power away from her, and you could really see the difference of the first year we did the Fair Share Monitor event on an international level, where especially me, who was in charge of that, kind of always kept on going back to Helena and seeking her advice and her approval of things, and where you could really see there was a bottleneck was kind of starting to be created here. And throughout the year, Helena just handing more and more ownership and more responsibility towards me, but also obviously towards other members of the team. You could really see in the second year, basically Helena wasn't informed at all. It was like, Helena, you have to be here at this time and we're going to be doing this. And that was basically how we could really see this transformation from looking at this person with the formal power position and the power that she had, really distributing that towards the people in the team and making them feel competent enough to make important decisions. So that had already happened within the whole team. But obviously there was still a lot of responsibility, legal responsibility, strategic, structural responsibilities that lay upon Helena. And so last year she asked the team who would like to, or whether somebody would like to join her in a co-leadership partnership. And I said yes. And so also with the intention of, distributing this legal responsibility among more shoulders, but also just creating more space where I think, or what I could imagine to be a very lonesome position, to be in more of companionship and having someone to share thoughts with, shares challenges with, and just being able to support each other in what is a very how would I say, demanding position. And so this was also obviously not just kind of decided by Helena herself, and the process or the structure of how Helena and I will create this co-leadership is also not just between the two of us. We have committed to taking time for ourselves and discussing things and what we would like from this co-leadership, what we maybe wouldn't like from this co-leadership. And we want to share that with the team every 2 weeks in our team meetings. And also obviously get information from them, get wishes from them. What would they want from this co-leadership? Where do they maybe still have question marks? How can we help them, or how can we help each other understand this new relationship? And yeah, maybe my last point, obviously for Helene and me, it was very important to also talk about our different relationship that we have now, from basically Helene with this formal position as ED and me, someone as an employee, and now changing this whole power dynamic, but which was also a super humble experience to do together. And yeah, which I think was a great learning just from this one conversation. Yeah, maybe so far to some practices that we've had within the team, and I would just maybe stop sharing and would be super happy to hear it from you with questions, remarks, anything. One second, let me stop sharing. There we go. And I think we can also unspotlight us so that everybody can see each other. Yeah, that's, I'm sure, somewhat nicer.
Well, thank you, Lisa and Helen, for sharing your journey. I have a question. So, Helen, you were the, the main person, the main executive director for Fair Share for 3 years. And then you invited Lisa to join. How did you pick your co-executive director? Because, that comes, and then was there a process that you followed to upskill her into this new position? And then we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot for the question, which is obviously a big one, and also I think a very individual one. I don't think there's one process that would work for everyone, but I had the massive privilege to have Tatu in my team. So she was, as she said, part of the very first recruitment we ever did. And I just recognized and acknowledged a lot of the things that she knows or sees that I didn't know or see. And so I already turned to her for advice and input rather early on, without any formal arrangements for that. And the feeling in myself, I mean, I always knew I didn't want to do this alone, but I had a growing feeling that he would be a person who would be interested to take on ownership and leadership together with me, and that our two perspectives and experiences could really kind of lift us up, because I knew if I do this with someone who thinks like me, then it's just like two persons who can divide our paths. But I was looking for this other perspective and this other voice, and I don't know, you can call it luck. Lisa Tatu was there, and it really felt like we could do this together. And then and Tatu, I hope it's okay that I share this. Tatu actually talked to other team members how they would feel about her moving into this position. And so it wasn't just like I one day announced this is how it's going to be, but it was actually also a process of the team adapting to my wish to have someone in this position with me, and then talking it through with Tatu and her willingness to move into that position. So that's how we did it. I wouldn't say, I mean, there were some hiccups, irritations. So this shouldn't sound like, oh, it was all just like smooth sailing, because I think once you distribute formal power, it does bring up questions, irritations, and also I think fears and anxieties. within the team, but given that we were still rather small when we took that decision, I think this worked rather well for us. Tato, do you want to add on before we take on Alexandra's question?
Maybe just, Elsa, you had asked the process. We didn't have a totally planned out map of what we were going to do in week 1 and week 2 and week 3. I basically came into this position at the beginning of this year, and last year we had attempted at trying to take enough time to really exchange and share what we wanted from each other and from this position. But as life is, we all know, a lot of stuff came up, and basically this time was cut very short. But there were some foundations, let's say, that we could lay last year, and basically now we are in this, I would say, experimental phase of what does this mean? What kind of conversations are we having? How is our relationship? How is our relationship with the team? So these are something we're just getting familiar with, but which we see as part of the process. Yeah. Alexandra.
I hope it's working. Hi, everyone. I need to do some emails in between, so I just thought I'd turn my camera off because it feels like I ignore the call, but I'm very glad to be here, and I found it very important that we start speaking about feminist organizations, as this is a very niche topic. And I was, on the one hand, not surprised, but a bit sad that when you opened your call, you were speaking about nonprofits or like on the social impact sector, as I think every sector, and especially in capitalistic views, when we think about a patriarchy and so on, should think about this. And I would like to know why you focused on that. I can imagine that, I have an idea of the answer, but I just wanted to ask this question. That's number one. And number two, so I co-founded a think tank on feminist artificial intelligence. And from a perspective of who's interested, it's a very diverse workforce. I'm also consulting a politician within the German parliament. And when we search for applications and we really try to empower BIPOC people, it is super difficult, like honestly. And that's, we're actually actively searching for people, and that's already in us, like, I think politics and green politics, so it's a green politician, I would think that might be interesting to many people, but we really struggle to attract not. So when we speak about feminism, I'm trying to avoid this white privileged feminism, because yes, we need to empower women, but diversity doesn't come from just the gender. So do you have any very practical advices on how does how can we change applications? Because with this think tank, FemAI, just from a nature, it's an NGO, it's more easy to attract diverse workforce. That's my personal experience, and I'm very happy to be convinced differently. Thank you.
I can answer maybe the second question, and yeah, Helena, you can take over the origin question. Yeah, so the second question, I actually also wrote a blog about that for our publication, which Helena can maybe share in the chat, where I speak exactly about this. And so I am also a racialized person in Germany, and it's always one thing to kind of, now you see it a lot more, that organizations or in job applications, it says we would also be happy about racialized people applying, and but this isn't all the work, right? It's not just now being aware, okay, there are racialized people out there and we're going to say happy if you apply, but if you come into this workspace where there's going to be microaggressions where people are going to ask you, where are you actually from? And this is a big question in Germany still. If you are a racialized person, and you can't be German because German is white. And so it's much more about the structures and the kind of space you're creating in that office. And I don't think it doesn't, obviously the more right you go, the worse it gets. But even in the left part, in the left party, in the Green Party, in the SPD, like we're all socialized in a racist world. And if we don't actively unlearn our racism, even in a Green Party, you will encounter racism or sexism. So also these parties are not free from these social inequality or these social injustices. And so I think it's much more really about showing also in the application or job listing that you want to deal with certain topics such as anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-ableism, because otherwise it's kind of just like, there needs to be much more work behind that than just inviting people to apply. And this is what I felt reading Fair Share's job listing. I felt that I, as a light-skinned Black woman in Germany, wouldn't have to explain where I'm from or questions like that, and that there was space for me to also bring in this critique. So if somebody would say something, I felt that I had the space to also say that, and not then hear, oh, but you're so sensitive, you shouldn't say that here. So these are things that happen in the workforce, everywhere in our society. So obviously not only in Germany, but I think that's, this dedication to actively create different spaces, working spaces, is, I think, so important if you want to have people, more diverse people working there and feeling safe and secure there. Yeah, and maybe Helena for the origin question.
Thank you.
Actually, since there's two other people, is it okay if we hear their questions and maybe we can collect them and then trying to answer them in the hour? And I can try to put something in the chat in addition to this answer. So Morgan and then Sally.
So actually, if you want to skip over me, it's okay, because it's not a question. It's actually more of a statement, because I work for NetHope, which is an international nonprofit working in the tech sector and the nonprofit sector. And it was just to say that your report on women within NGOs inspired me to actually create a mentorship program within NetHope. So we are a membership organization. We represent 65 of the largest nonprofits in the world. And so I've been running this program for a year now, which was a pilot program. And now it's actually out of pilot and it's becoming its own full-fledged program. So it was more like you mentioned your mission statement. It's working. I saw it. I did something. And we're continuing to grow the program. We also have a course that we're developing for feminist, for women leadership in nonprofits as well. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let Sally ask her question.
Oh, thank you so much. So for me, sorry, I joined late. You may have addressed the question that I want to raise. So I'm a feminist based in Zimbabwe, doing organizing work around the African feminist spaces, and then and also connecting globally. So my question was around, there are narratives we are inheriting, which are not our narratives, because when people continue to want to punish you for being white and saying I'm feminist and working with people, and they start putting a tag of privilege. Are you really privileged? Are white feminists really privileged when we actually unpack these things? So for me, it was around, how do we create conversations of unpacking this, and also not because in feminist spaces, if we begin to color each other, if we begin to divide each other, and we are actually practicing bad feminism, you know? So I wanted to then say there is what brings us together, which is feminist practices, however we decide to show up in it. But we also need to hold ourselves accountable when our assumptions and our biases and our privileges are beginning to make other feminists not feel equal or safe in the space. So the issue I wanted to ask was around how are you putting internal accountability mechanisms within your organizational practices? Because all my work, this is my 18th year at work now. The bruises in these careers, I've gotten them from fellow comrades, feminist sisters. So what are the healing justice practices that we put in place? What are the internal accountability systems that we have put in place? If not, I'm willing for us to be co-creating. And how do you deal with our bad behavior? Because we hurt each other out of passion, and then it doesn't work for generations that are coming before us. And then just the unlearning conversations, because they are what we read about feminism in the books, and then there is what we experience in practice. Then last one, around recruitment, to say there is what we have also inherited as good corporate governance or human rights, human resources management practices and recruitment by the cold male designed mechanisms. Say when you want to recruit, you have to do a job advert, you have to place it here, this is how you structure it. How do we disrupt that and start doing our own way of recruitment that works for us and be okay with it? So that when we headhunt, we can headhunt. Like I said, if you want people from Africa or from Zimbabwe, where I'm based, when there's a particular skill set, I can facilitate that because I'm your sister. We hold space for each other. So those are it can be vexing, but I'm sharing, but I'm also saying I'm willing to be the journey for us to co-create. But what are some of the practices that you have started to put in internal accountability mechanisms so that we call each other out when we are out of line? We also create safe space for everyone. We don't punish each other for being either white or black or because we all have our own struggles. Patriarchy sophisticates all the time when it engages us. Sorry, I'm taking much time. Over to you. You are still muted if you are saying something, sorry.
Yes, sorry, it was I forgot my mouse at the office, so I'm dealing with my touchpad today. Thank you for that, Sally, and also thank you, Morgan, before for the lovely words. Sally, these are very tough, big questions. I don't think I'll be able to answer them all. Maybe for the recruitment, what we did there was I think what is also already different is that we didn't focus on, for example, saying you need to have this and this much experience, you have to be working already for, this length of time, because for a lot of people who are maybe just coming out of uni, there's always this boundary or barrier for where am I supposed to have this work experience from if I just came from uni, and then you can't enter a job basically. So we didn't ask for that. We didn't ask for school education. We didn't ask people to hand in their CVs. We tried to find a format also, so just kind of what is possible legally, that we can work with people who are not based in Europe, and thus kind of like expand our team globally. So those are a few steps that we took. I think Helena also just posted our blog about our recruitment process 2.0, which I'd just recommend you to look at. And as for maybe accountability and internal practices, we are also still building those, I would say, Helena. We are actually just starting to create so-called working groups, where one working group now will be working on safeguarding and care. So how can we embed care much more into our organization? So I'll probably be able to say more about that maybe in a couple of months. Helena, would you like to add maybe to the internal structures?
Yeah, I think it's a super important and big question. And what I realized is that when there was the 5 of us, we basically did it all the time. So in our weekly team meeting, there were a lot of conversations about discomfort, about how we do things, how can we be intentional. It becomes much more difficult with a bigger team that's also not in personal, doesn't see itself in person so much. Sorry, my doorbell is ringing. And so it's a question I'm also asking myself, how and where we create these spaces that they are meaningful and also provide that healing space and don't do more harm. And I don't have an answer. It's something I'm thinking about a lot. What I feel helps us to do it is that we have a range of perspectives in the team, and we don't have, so there's not one person who always has to do the work of calling something out or in. And I feel that helps us to some extent, that the likeliness that someone will notice it is higher, but that doesn't prevent it from happening. And so I have the same question. I don't have an answer, but I just posted a link here to some of the conversations we've been hosting on questions like this around accountability, discomfort, and conflict in spaces like that. But I am myself on a learning and searching journey, how to do that intentionally, continuously, and meaningfully. And I guess with that, Elsa, Camilla, are you closing the session? And I posted our email address here. Please do reach out to us anytime. We do have a lot of resources on these questions on our website. And yeah, just get in touch and stay in touch. There's a lot more conversations to be had.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you so much, Lisa, for such a fruitful and insightful conversation, and for sharing your journey. I think it has sparked a lot of great and really interesting conversation. And I think this is only the first step towards a much bigger continuing conversation. So thank you so much for hosting this session. And thank you so much for everyone who has joined. And I'll give the word to Elsa now.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining. And this is, the first of many that we are going to have under the learning series. Last year, we did a few case clinics under the Women's Leadership Task Force. And we did things like addressing the imposter syndrome, doing internal branding work, and building your thought leadership. And we have some ideas on topics for this year. But if you have topics and interests, please send it to us. And we'd love to, explore. If you have something to present as well, we'd be happy to showcase your work and learn with you and from you. So thank you once again. And thank you, Helen. And thank you, Lisa, for leading us in today's discussion. Sally, it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Sally.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. I wouldn't have missed. I just needed to be in the feminist energies. Hugs, and lots of love.
Maybe everybody can send some love to Sally.
Thank you, dearest.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so kind and sweet of all of you.
And if everyone's comfortable, maybe they can switch on their video and we'll take a quick picture. I know a lot of people have left, but still whoever's remaining.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you for joining and see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you, everyone.
day.
Bye.